New faces, new debates, every single week.
Let me say something that absolutely can't be debated.
It's time for Fight Night with Alex Strouf.
Welcome into another edition of Fight Night with Alex Strouf. I'm obviously Alex Strouf, and this week we posed the question, what is the most effective way to construct the college football playoff? Right now we're standing at 4 teams. A lot of people aren't happy with that. One of those individuals happens to hail from Jacksonville, North Carolina, and he's joining me right now, Mr. Ray Lynn. Ray, thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'm ready to dive in.
Let's get at it, man.
So talk to me about the take that you submitted, you posted for me to see, and it's kind of an interesting concept. I'm interested to hear it live and direct. So talk us through that.
Well, obviously, everybody's not happy with 4. So
Right.
The natural progression, people just want to go to 8. It's the next even number. Hey, let's go from 4 to 8. To me, it's one of those things. No matter how many teams you get, the next guy gonna feel like they got left off.
That's
you do
fair.
4 teams, 5 and 6 think they should have been there. When you do 8, 9, and 10, they're gonna think they should have been there. My suggestion is 12, and still 13 and 14 will think they have a shot. But what you do with 12 is you give everybody a chance. I think you can get all the 5 power conferences in. You can take the 5 power and independent, and then that leaves you 6 wild cards. Imagine how great it would be this season. You got your top 4 seeds, Bama, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Notre Dame. They all get a bye. So now you have an 18 bracket with, let's say, UCF and Washington at 8 and 9 playing, Georgia and Penn State at 5 and 12 playing, Michigan and Florida at 7 and 10, Ohio State and LSU, right? And then those 4 games play for the right to play the top 4. Everybody has a chance. All the power conferences have a chance. UCF, everybody wants the little guy to get a chance. Think if we had a playoff and Boise State would have got a chance all those years.
Right.
College football is the only sport that eliminates 80% of the field, and they don't have a chance to play for a championship. NCAA basketball gives you 64 teams have a chance. You look at the NFL, 32 teams. How many make the playoffs? 12?
Yep.
NBA, 32 teams, 16 make the playoffs. College football, 100-some-odd teams. 4 of them get a chance to play for a championship.
4 of them get the national championship, and you're right, Ray. That's a good point, and that was kind of what we led off with. Nobody's happy with the 4-team playoff, but now we're talking about expanding it to number 6, 8, 12, whatever it might be, right? I like the 4-team playoff. I'm in the minority. I like the 4-team playoff. However, I don't like how the committee handles it. Because you mentioned UCF. You look how they have done everything correct. They've won 25 straight, and they're sitting at 8th overall in the college football playoff.
Have zero chance.
And have zero chance to make the playoff. We knew that. We were saying that at the beginning of the season. There was 2 lost teams ahead of them in the rankings. We fantasize over the Power 5, number 1, but we fantasize over great offenses, powerful defenses, powerful teams, the big market teams. We're not looking at teams like UCF and saying, oh, boy, they're really going to sell some tickets. And that's an issue because America loves the underdog. You and I would love to see UCF versus Alabama going at it in a the semifinal game. I mean, everybody would watch that game because everybody wants to see Alabama fall and the underdog rise, and we don't have that opportunity. I like the 14 playoff, but I don't like how the committee does the selection process.
And I believe the only way we get to that, you have to expand. Because first off, you go back to the old system, the original AP, then the BCS. They was only giving 2 teams a chance at that point.
And we're all happy.
Never had a chance.
We're all happy that's done with.
Right. So, but then they expanded to a 14 playoff. We should have known we were in trouble in year 1. 2014, the inaugural college football playoff. TCU, going into the last week of the season, is sitting at number 3. They win a game 55-3 and drop to number 6. How do you explain that to How do you explain to a team, hey, you were number 3, right? You're going into this week thinking we're sitting in the college football playoff. You go out and destroy a team. Iowa State, I think it was 55-3. The 3 teams behind you all beat ranked teams. I want to say Florida State beat Georgia Tech, Ohio State beat Wisconsin 59-0, and Baylor won a close game, 38-27.
Yeah.
And Baylor had beat TCU early in the season. But going into that week, they were number 3. They won a game by 52 points and dropped 3 spots. Too much bias involved in having a committee selected. I think there should be some kind of mixture of a committee along with bring back some of the BCS. Let the computers get involved. Because with the eye test, Our eyes tell us different things. Somebody looks at TCU win by 53 and go, oh, it's not that impressive. What more could they have done?
You're rattling off almost 8 touchdowns. What more can you do? And that's a great point, Ray. And I'm totally in agreement with that, but I'm not totally in agreement with the 12 team or even the 8 team, because I like the exclusivity factor where, we have to do everything right. But when a team is doing everything right and they can't get in, that's my issue. I love the fact where, we have to go perfect because, like you said, 100 and whatever it is, 45 teams or something like that in college football. You have to win all your games, be one of the very few teams that do that in order to lock up a spot in this exclusive playoff of 4 teams. That's why I like it. I like the exclusivity factor. If you lose a game, that's going to come back to haunt you. And you saw that with my Badgers this year. Once they lost to BYU, they just went snowballing downhill. However, no, go ahead.
Do you think, you don't think 8 would still be exclusive, though? Out of 100 some odd teams, right? At the most, you're looking at 2, maybe 3 teams in your conference may get in. And we think about how, and I've always said, the SEC is the best conference in college football, yet they're still somehow overrated, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does.
Year after year, they get the respect of, well, they play in the SEC. Well, sometimes teams have down years. But a year like this year, SEC may get 3 teams in. Why shouldn't Georgia have a chance to play for the national championship?
And I'm a guy that has been huge on LSU as well, even though they have 2 or 3 losses, I believe. They have
Florida.
Right. This is a very good conference, and you're right on that. And they probably should have a shot because as Georgia's coach, who I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he went off in the post-game press conference after they lost the SEC championship game to Alabama. Yeah. He said after the game, he said something along the lines of, if you go ask Nick Saban, if there's one team in college football they don't want to play in the playoff, it's us. It's not Clemson. It's not Notre Dame. It's not Oklahoma. It's us. And you know what? He's probably right because the hardest game Alabama played all year, they had to pull in a backup quarterback and beat Georgia again, but that's neither there. But
this is part of the topic, but that's the most ironic thing ever. You look at last year's national championship, Jalen Hurts isn't playing that great. Tua comes out of nowhere for people who weren't paying attention to him and beats Georgia. And look at Sayers. Next year, for him to be able to come back and he didn't get his spot back, but for him to redeem himself against Georgia nonetheless, it was an amazing story.
No, you're right. But nonetheless, I think.
Like you said, Alabama steamrolled everybody, right?
Yeah.
Georgia goes in because they're in their conference. If Georgia's in the Big 12, they don't have to play Alabama in that game, and they're in the college football playoff. So for teams like that, their playoff starts in week 6.
Yeah. That's kind of the issue. And again, that's why I like the 14 playoff is you have to be good from day 1 to day 12, essentially day 11, and you have to continue to just build on something. You can't slip up, and that's kind of almost a beautiful thing, but also an S-wordy thing as well, because you look at, if we're perfect all year long, UCF, Alabama, Notre Dame, we're okay. If we just go out and take care of our business, we can't worry about anything else. If there's a day where there's 5 undefeated teams, then I'll have an issue with a 14 playoff. Maybe it should be a buy-year case because there's so many teams. I don't think there's a real hardcore solution because if you go to 8 teams, like you said at the beginning, we're just going to want to move it to 12 when the next guy out. It's going to be a pain in the ass for years and years to come, no doubt about it.
Absolutely, which is why I jumped to 12. Because when you go 8, you go, okay, let's say we take the Power 5. And my biggest issue with the 14 playoff, besides the fact that the little guy would never have a chance in that format, is with the 14 playoff, we have 5 power conferences is what we call them, the Power 5. Somebody's going to be left out every year. And in some years, more than one. Look at how many years a conference has been close to getting to. Look at the years this year and I want to say 2 years ago where Ohio State and Michigan were both really, really good going into their last game of the season. Somebody's got to lose that game. The one who loses, he's out, right? With a 4-team, you're excluding the conference off top. You're excluding the conference. It's the only sport where you can win. Like you're the best team in your conference and you still don't have a shot for the national championship. To me, you got to at least let all the conference winners in. I can even live with 8. I don't like 8, but I'd live with it. Take your Power 5, 3 wild cards, and go from there. But I like 12 even better. Get rid of some of these games that don't mean nothing. Who wants to see Alabama play Citadel? Get rid of it.
Hey, they were tied at halftime. Give them some credit. Give them some
Man,
credit.
listen. These teams going out here playing DeVry University, man, nobody cares about those games. Get rid of them. Let teams play about 9 regular season games. You know, maybe two out of conference, 6 or 7 in conference.
I think that's a fair solution. If we cut back the schedule and maybe we start the playoff maybe this time in December or halfway through the month, and we say, look, 16 of you or 12 of you, then maybe it makes sense. Cut the non-conference BS, or maybe you have one non-conference game at the beginning of the year. Do your conference schedule, do a conference championship, and get to it. I still like the 4-team. I'm stuck on it. We're going to get to our last segment here in a second. But I think I just like the exclusivity factor. I don't know what it is, but you make a great point. If we have 5 conferences, and if Oklahoma wouldn't have slipped up against Texas earlier this season, we'd have 5 undefeated teams in the top 10. But one of them, obviously, being UCF, it has other 2-loss teams and 1-loss teams ahead of them. So we're going to get to our final segment here, Ray. It's called Final Round. I'm going to let you state your final case. I'm going to give you a minute to wrap up. Don't you get too worried. It's okay. The final round here on Fight Night. State your final case to the people. Tell me why we should move to 12. Give me your best case.
Again, I mean, I'm not going to say anything I haven't said already, but again, first off, 4, that's dead. We can't do that. Then you got the monkey wrenches thrown there. A team like Notre Dame, they don't even have a conference.
Yeah, that needs to go. That needs to go. They need to get it.
Put them in a conference, but they go out and they play people. But again, I think 12. You give everybody a chance when you do that. Everybody gets a chance. You increase the odds of upsets. We love March Madness because anything can happen. In college football, you don't see too much of anything can happen. You open it up to 12. You get your Power 5 winners in there. You throw in now 6 wild cards. In fact, always give a little guy a chance. You take one of those the smaller conferences, the independent conferences. Take their winner with your Power 5, and then you give 6 wild cards. Everybody gets a chance. Now those teams. Now your playoff isn't starting in week 3. You lose a game. You go out and have a bad week. Ohio State. Who they lose to? Who did Ohio State lose to? It was Purdue. Yes. They lost to Purdue, and they looked very suspect against Maryland, right? You line those teams up 99 more times. Ohio State's going to win probably 99 times, right? So you also leave room for error. Teams can go out and have a bad game. But you open it up to 12. It's still exclusive, not as exclusive as 4, but you give everybody a chance. The little guys get in, we get the underdog. And it makes it where, again, your playoff isn't starting in week 3. So that's my case. I believe 12 is the number. And like I said, if we go to 8, teams 9 and 10 are going to cry about it. So let's just go and skip 8 and go to 12. Let's just skip 8 and go to 12.
Hey, they call it the unlucky number 13 for a reason. But nonetheless, you make a great case for 12 teams. However, why I'm stuck on 4 is because every season is so different. We can make the case for Power 5, but look at the Pac-12 this year. It was pretty much hot garbage, other than maybe Washington. They were all right. I mean, you're going to have years where we have a down year in a certain conference. Maybe not the SEC, maybe not the Big Ten, but everywhere else, you never know what could happen. Clemson could lose 3 games in the ACC, maybe somehow in the near future. We never know. I don't see that happening with Dabo Swinney at the helm, but that's just an example. I think 4 teams is the number, but a committee selection process has to change. It has to, because we have to figure out how we can iron out these details of how a team, for the last 2 seasons, I know they try not to take into account the previous season, but at this season, they went undefeated in UCF. Last season, they went undefeated and then went on into a bowl game and beat Auburn, who was ranked number 7 overall. They've proven their case time and time again. Although they don't have the sexy schedules we like to call it, they still deserve a place somewhere, and because they have done everything right. And if you do everything right, how can you be left out? And that is my case for 4, but we have to have change somewhere else. Rather than the number, we need a change on a selection process. That's my case. You heard Ray's.
UCF is the modern day Boise State.
You're right. You're spot on. I mean, and Boise State was so exciting in the 2000s, early 2010 era. I mean, they have the blue field, so how can you turn them down? But nonetheless, right. Ray Lynn from Jacksonville, North Carolina, this week on Fight Night. Ray, I appreciate your time. It's been a blast.
Enjoyed it, man.
All right, take care, Ray. Thank you. That has been Fight Night. We'll talk to you guys on Monday with a new topic. Make sure you vote on who won this. I think you might favor with Ray, which I understand. And if Ray does win this vote, he'll join me at the end of February for our quarterly, every 3 months rather roundtable. So make sure you vote. It's attached to the video on Facebook. If you're on Twitter, make sure you vote on there, and it'll be posted on Instagram. So Ray, take care, and maybe we'll talk to you at the end of February once again.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Ray.